funny thing is, there is a lot of yellow in some of the concept art that we have work on that we have.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Hey everyone, we're back. Gone is Vaudable. Killer Pigeon's still here, but more importantly, we have the president of FrostGiantStudios. We have the game director. We have the man, the wizard, the master, I don't know. There's probably better technical terms. We got Tim Campbell here. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for letting me on the stream. I'm very excited to be here.
So before we get into and we get you to tell us what the third race is, every single plot point of the campaign, other things that that are unknown as to this point. Mind introducing yourself to everyone? I mean, we know you're president and game director, but you have a long and storied history in the RTS space, don't you?
Thank you. Yeah, it's very kind words, but I've been lucky enough to work on some great teams on great projects in my career, and I think most relevant to people watching for Stormgate, I was one of the designers on Red Alert 2 on the Command & Conquer series, the start of Generals as well. I left Westwood and went to Blizzard, where I became the lead campaign designer for Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne and the start of StarCraft 2, and then left to follow other adventures from there too. So being able to form FrostGiant and develop Stormgate is like coming full circle back to my roots and really what got me into being a professional game developer in the first place.
Did you hear that, Beowulf? Red Alert 2? See, another person who's going to tell you you have to play that game, okay?
What if I just play Tempest Rising? Like, does that get me there? Is that the same thing?
No, because someone that I think Red Alert 2 done very well, and you actually hit on the Warcraft done really well, is their storytelling and their campaign focus, which I think is actually a great thing to kind of ask you a little bit about, Tim, because you've played your fair share of RTSs over the years, and I think it'd be fair to say that a lot of them struggle to capture a memorable experience long term, right? Like the ones that do, they do it through character development, they do it obviously through a lot of lore that draws you in. I'm kind of curious, obviously can't reveal too much, but kind of peering behind the curtains, how big of a focus is that for what Stormgate is cooking?
Yeah, great question. I'll start by talking about just the challenges a little bit in developing great RTS campaigns. I think one of the things that's challenging is that you have to have both extremes in focus at all times. You want to be telling an epic conflict. You want to have sweeping armies. You want to have just this grand scale to everything. But at the same time, really what drives campaigns forward, it really helps you connect as a player to what's going on, are the characters and maybe the drama and conflicts they're having on a smaller scale in the foreground. And so one of the challenges with building RTS campaigns is kind of managing that dance between those elements, so you have both personal and relatable and small scale, but then set against this backdrop that really has high stakes and sweeping consequences. And so that's always the kind of balancing act that you experience working on this type of campaign. For Stormgate, campaigns are one of our 4 Cs. So you'll hear us talk a lot about them. You heard Savop mention them earlier. And what the 4 Cs mean is that we are really trying to build Stormgate as an RTS that anybody can play and feel comfortable in. We have competitive, obviously, as a main focus. That's what people are seeing a lot of during NextFest, and that's one of the first things that we've shown with tournaments and everything that's going on. But that's one of 4 things that get equal billing at the studio, alongside cooperative, alongside campaign, and alongside custom games as well, too. So campaigns are one of our main focuses, right up there with competitive play. Actually, what I was doing before this call and what I'm going to do after this call and what's on my second monitor right now is one of the campaign missions that I'm working on alongside our level design team. And so this is a huge focus for us. We're trying to do something really special with our campaigns and make them just really memorable. Yeah, it's something we're pouring a lot into, and I'm excited to share more about them later on this year.
So before we ask any further questions, but just because you mentioned it, Tim, any hints on what this mission might be?
Yeah, I cannot dive into the storyline details because Gerald will come flying in and tackle me. You'll just see this long hook just kind of pull me right off. No, I have to be super careful because there's a lot going on that's really exciting that I want to talk about, but that we're kind of holding back to share later on. But one of the things that we're trying to do with each mission is make sure that it gives you an exciting, unique play experience in and of itself. So every single mission we're looking at through the lens of how can we make this feel unique when you step into it. So it's not just, oh, there's 5 base building missions in a row or 5 installation missions in a row. It's really getting to that mission where you did that thing and you remembered that event that happened. We're trying to make sure that each one has that unique aspect to it that'll really help it stick out. And so, yeah, I'm working on one right now that has some new terrain features in it, and so I'm working heavily on the terrain side. One of the exciting things about making the campaigns is that we use our internal tools in our editor. We really stress it out. Campaigns use all aspects. We have to build crazy terrain, usually with greater height difference and more extreme variation in terrain than you would get in a competitive map, where you're worried about legibility and readability. But we're also pushing on adding sound effects and music and the trigger editor and objectives and it's so many things. And so we're building that tool set in conjunction with the campaigns. And that's what's really exciting, is that we're building campaigns, yes, but we're also building this thing that I can't wait to release to the community and see what everyone else is able to do with it.
See, now I'm just trying to I'm looking in his environment to see if there's any reflections, so I can kind of get from this. I think one kind of
I was thinking about hiding like a sticky note back there or something, but no, I didn't.
Oh, the Easter egg
back there. That's worth something,
And, I'm looking for any trends of yellow, right, to see if there's a theme here. Well,
I do see some yellow back there.
I do too. I mean, it's possible. One thing that's kind of interesting.
Funny thing is, there is a lot of yellow in some of the concept art that we have working on that we have.
Oh, okay, there we go. One thing I was going to kind of highlight there, I think it's good to hit on, is obviously, ongoing support is a very big part of development nowadays. I think with some games, there's that feeling where, especially in the RTS, even if they support the multiplayer long term, the campaign gets done and it gets dropped. Are you guys aiming to keep a consistent development trend and support for those 4 pillars consistently as the years go on?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we've seen working on the start of RTS games, the sunsetting years of RTS games, kind of every step through the middle, is there are certain things that it is important to put continued effort into, to not just build and ship and just say we're done and walking away from it, but really this genre, I think, has so many different ways to love it and to be excited about playing this, that in order to really build a game that can bring all of this audience together, you have to put ongoing effort into these things, because so many people play the campaign only, or so many people play competitive only, or so many people want to play with friends, and if it's not a shared activity that they can do with their friends, then they're not going to play at all, right? And so campaigns is absolutely something that we are going to be putting a lot of ongoing effort into, and we've already done that by putting a lot of effort into the world design and into the skeleton of the story that we're going to be telling for years to come. And that was something that we did early on. And we really, one of the dances we're trying to do is that we need to know where we're going with a lot of the major overarching plot points, so that we can tell a coherent story on the way there and not just kind of wander aimlessly in the desert. But at the same time, we do want to allow ourselves flexibility too. As we build more of the story, we're going to fall in love with certain characters that we didn't expect to fall in love with, or we're going to be really intrigued by certain plot points that weren't expected to be major. And we want to be able to flex and maybe move some characters more into the foreground, or cycle some out, or emphasize different aspects of the storytelling. And so we have the bone set, but then we're also working a lot organically as we move through it.
Now, talking off that a second, actually, I'm going back to a question someone in chat was asking a couple hours ago. I told him I'd ask the question. It factors in here. Because you mentioned that in previous interviews that you want things to be in a stage of gray. Infernals are not necessarily bad. Vanguards are not necessarily good. There are times when Vanguard players are going to fight as part of the Infernals. Infernal players come over to the side of the Vanguard. Whatever. Something happens with a third faction involving, cat ears and vacuums. I'm not totally... And the color yellow, not sure what that was.
Blueberry pie too.
Yeah, exactly. What is your favorite dessert, Tim? But more importantly, how are they going to be incentivized to do that? The question really was, how/why are people going to be, are Vanguard going to be like sent to work with Infernals and vice versa? And I know you can't necessarily give story bones necessarily, but what kind of things are we looking at here?
I'm glad you're asking this. So a lot of times people come into maybe the campaigns and the story side of a game like this, and they're expecting one of two things. They're expecting either there's going to be good guy factions and there's going to be bad guy factions, right? Or they're going to be expecting a lot of shades of gray. And really what we want is both. We want there to be really good guys and we want there to be really bad guys. We just don't want there to only be good guys and bad guys. So we're working heavily within the design of all of our factions, as well as we're working through the storyline to flesh out different subgroups, sub-factions within each of the different races with different motivations. Some of them are very bad or very good, but they don't just stop there as being bad or good. They have actual goals and aims and things that they will do and be willing to do and things that they won't be in order to achieve those aims. And so I think really that's the big part of it, is really being thorough, thinking through each of the factions as a race that is not monolithic and singular perspective, but really trying to make sure that each one has a bunch of voices in it that, you know, will be louder or softer as you go through the campaign at different stages. And so, yeah, that's kind of fun. The Vanguard are only one group of humans fighting back against the Infernals. There are a bunch of other groups as well too. You, with the co-op mission, are getting a little taste for Havoc, which is one of the groups, which is largely largely human, I should say. But they're more of a mercenary group, and so they sometimes work with the Infernals, sometimes they actually fight alongside them, or they even bring in some of the Marauders and kind of the denizens of the world that we've built.
So is there maybe a thought for down the line having those sub-factions be different subcategories that you select at the beginning of the game? You know, like we've been talking about third faction, maybe
for sure
under that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're really trying to get that. Get me to say something I'm not supposed to say here. No, I love the idea of sub-factions. We're toying with it a little bit. Obviously, we're preparing for it on the narrative side. So you could go through a human campaign, for example, and interact with different subgroups within the human campaign. That's where we get a lot of the texture that you need to tell a good story within the campaign. But the heroes that we're building also for co-op play are really going to be one way that players can get a sense for each of these different sub-factions. And whether we develop them in the future further into an actual sub-faction that you can select and play as, that remains to be seen. It's a possibility. But right now, we're really just trying to build out the world and build out our heroes and make all those systems be fun.
Gotcha. So on the subject as well, there have been a couple really rather popular. Once StarCraft added their ability to make your own custom campaigns, we saw a lot of those campaigns, like the Wings of Liberty campaign was remade from the Zerg perspective, and the Wings of Liberty campaign was remade from the Protoss perspective, and you can
I love stuff like that.
It's so cool, right? Have you given any thoughts to, because I know you talked about maybe having different opportunities for different sub-factions to do things, the opportunity to go and like play through the different campaigns from different perspectives? So yeah, I think you've said that Vanguard is going to be the first mission pack that goes out in early access. That's going to be Vanguard or humans, whatever it is. But thoughts about like being able to play that as Malok's faction or of the Infernals or whatever it is, and kind of explore that story in a slightly different way.
Yeah, that sounds exciting to me, and you're kind of poking at some topics that have us excited on the development side. That said, we have our hands full just making the core game experience and the core factions playable for one race. But you know, the things that I dream of up ahead after launch are lots of ways to really expand on the idea of campaigns being a replayable mode in and of itself. And there are some things that we're working on right now to help campaigns be replayable and something that you can really sink your teeth into and not just play once and be done with it. But in the future, you know, this isn't anything that we're planning or working on. I'd love to be able to faction swap or hero swap and be able to kind of play campaign missions in an arcade mode. So those are the sorts of things that that get exciting to me because they're new ground that I haven't seen before in RTS campaigns. But really what we're focusing on right now is making sure that the campaigns tell a strong story, are really high quality and epic feeling, and allow you to replay them and play them with friends as well. The co-op side is something that we've mentioned multiple times, but that's really a big challenge / opportunity for us that we're putting a lot of thought and effort into, because traditionally craft campaigns and most RTS campaigns are single player only, and finding a way to allow you to play with your friends without undercutting the strengths of the single player experience is a really fine balancing act to do. And so that's something that's taking a lot of effort.
I think one thing that's kind of interesting there when we're talking about like the modded campaign side of things. Obviously, we're quite early into that kind of phase. We're not expecting like huge leaps and bounds in the next few months on the modding side. Main game has to come first. One thing that's always fascinated me is this idea in the past that we've seen some different developers try to monetize modding in a way that the modders can make something back. I think like that example of campaigns that seem good enough to be integrated in the game comes to mind to me. Do you think that that's something that you guys over at Stormgate are looking to explore? Is this possibility of when you see mods are good enough to be their own game mode or their own encompassing campaign, releasing them as some sort of paid DLC that kicks back to the people that created them?
I think that's a great question, and I wouldn't be surprised if we took some step like that in the future. But really, it's not part of our near-term plans. What we're focused on right now is getting the editor out to people as soon as we can. It's something that we're probably going to release after the start of early access, hopefully as soon after as we can. And then be expanding its functionality over time. That is the main focus. And I am, kind of getting back to the question about like race swapping campaigns and stuff like that. I am constantly blown away by the creativity of the community working on, whatever content, sparks their imagination. It's always blown me away after I've shipped a game to see what the community does with that. So that's front and center for us, and really giving them as many tools as we can as soon as possible. But as we move forward, we're hoping to, see a range of mods, see people be able to introduce new factions and new armies of their own, tell their own storylines through campaigns. And there is definitely a conversation of, we would love to be able to support those mod makers. We would love for them to be able to really put the time and effort into their creations to make them really shine. And we understand that a component to that is them being able to make some money for their work and to be able to, ideally be able to make a living off of making fantastic content. But at the same time, we're also aware that one of the legacies of Warcraft and StarCraft has been just having such a wealth of content out there generated by players that we don't want to stifle that either. So I think it's something that we actively are thinking about. We have already tried to get feedback from the community, and probably will be continuing that conversation going forward as we figure out what, if anything, we're doing on that front.
Gotcha. And Tim, because I do want to give a little time for chat to ask questions, one final question for you before we get into that. In the past, FrostGiant has talked about wanting to make not only a good game, obviously, in a 4Cs, but making a game that is a little bit easier for someone who has never touched an RTS, or they played like one RTS game 10 years ago. Like we had Vaudable on earlier, and he'd never played. And I know a lot of that technology, a lot of those ideas aren't necessarily implemented yet. It's, that's more of an engineering lift. But I was wondering if you could peer back the curtain a little bit and talk about what your plans are, if they're in a position to talk about, in terms of how you plan on giving that soft landing or that soft on-ramp.
Absolutely. And there's probably more things related to that we are working on or planning to work on than we really have time for here. But it is front and center one of the main conversations we have with the game. I really think that there fundamentally is nothing broken about the RTS genre. We're trying to really embrace the elements of the genre that really we've come to love over decades playing it, right? But we believe that there's a whole segment of players out there who either, like you said, have never played an RTS, have heard of RTSs but been intimidated by them, or have played once or twice and kind of fallen off because of X reason. And we're really building Stormgate to be able to support both those players and current competitive hardcore RTS players in the same experience, and have it be good for both of them. And this is something which manifests in a lot of different ways. Where, you know, you can see maybe an early step towards it if you play co-op on a tutorial difficulty as Vanguard. You can see some hand-holding that goes alongside Blockade. We're looking into lots of ways to have dynamic help pop up for players who maybe get into trouble states as they're going through the experience. But we're also investing heavily in cooperative play and social play as ways that new players can come in and have a less intimidating first experience than just going into 1v1, or be brought in by an experienced player and then have 1v1 where you're getting smoked by the person who brought you in right here. Have that be like the only way to play. And so co-op, like you're seeing right now in NextFest and Stormgate, is a big focus for us, that you can, as an experienced player, bring in some new players alongside you and have that experience with them. But co-op in campaign, we view as an even better place to bring new players into, because campaign can be played on a variety of difficulty levels. You can do it at your own pace, and traditionally it's not about just building the biggest army or anything like this. It's about experiencing a storyline, and we can make that very, very accessible. One of the main barriers to that being a good on-ramping tool for previous RTSs is that it's been single player only. And so for us, being able to support a second player or a third player in that experience is key. And that extends to our business model as well. We've shared some details about how we're going to be building an episodic story and selling both individual map packs and full-length campaign bundles that kind of bring everything together. But one of the details that we haven't shared that goes to the social aspect is that the second and third players don't have to own the campaign content. So you as a player can purchase the campaign content that you want, and you can bring your family or your friends or people that you want to share this experience with in for free. And that was one of the fundamental stakes in the ground that we wanted to put when thinking through the co-op campaign, because, you know, me as a parent thinking about being able to share this experience with my kids, or people who have like a tight friend group from maybe the 3-player co-op mode or our 3v3 mode that will be rolling out in the future, and they want to bring that group into campaigns, well, it's a high bar to expect everyone to purchase that content. And so we want to make it as available as possible within this. And so players 2 and 3 can join their first friend without needing to buy additional copies of the campaign content.
Oh, I love that. I think we've all seen plenty of games in the past where it's like a $20 expansion your friend can't afford. All of a sudden, like, your audience halves, right? And then matchmaking takes longer. People start to drop off. I mean, we've seen some big examples, big like titles, ones that you'd never imagine. Like, I think Call of Duty was an example where they were like away with map packs. They went to battle passes because they were like, we want to keep the players in. So I think it's a great smart move. We did have a question coming through in the campaign. Like, I've got a follow-up one that's going to be a bit deeper, but to get your brain warmed up on this,
Sounds good.
Brew was asking what Tim's favorite RTS campaign mission from an older game is. Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
Oof, best campaign mission. That's tough. There's been a lot of good ones, a lot of great ones for different reasons. The culling, I'm just going to call out the culling from Warcraft 3. That is a map I did not work on. And I, as the lead campaign designer for Warcraft 3, I'd love to point to a map that I did work on and say that's the best thing ever. I didn't work on this map, but the map was such an epic one. It's one of the only RTS missions I can think of that people know by name. I can't think of the name of very many other missions. I can remember them vividly, but not their names. But the culling was a classic one.
I love, by the way, that we have Daybringer, who I don't know if he worked on it or not, but is in chat right now. Before you said, I don't know if you saw this. I don't know the time it worked out, but he's immediately saying, don't say the culling. So
I can't see chat right now. So no, I apologize if I did that. That's funny.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think, you know, like now I'm going to really make your brain work for this, because obviously, like, we were playing a few co-ops, and I was like, I think the perfect example is when Beowulf was using the catapult units. I was like, the Infernal catapult units, they remind me of like Warhammer, with the Goblin gliders.
Oh
And
yeah.
I was sitting there, I was thinking all the inspirations that must have come in. If you had to choose like your top 5 biggest influences on the development of Stormgate, whether it could actually be entire universes, right? Like when you were talking about no one being a good guy, I thought about Warhammer as a whole universe, because you know what they say, everyone is an ass in that universe. There's no good guy. If you had to choose either game or a universe that's been created, what are your top 5 biggest inspirations?
Oh my goodness. That is a really good question. You're going to make me stop and think about this.
Yeah.
Obviously, Warcraft and StarCraft. So I'm just going to take 2 off the table right there. Okay.
Easy.
I don't know if you count Warhammer or 40K as different ones or the same.
40K the tabletop, or like Dawn of War.
Well, they're kind of the same, right?
To be perfectly honest, I think we play so many things that each developer on the team would have a different answer for this, but we really do, as fans of this type of setting, this type of game, we do carry a lot of subconscious influences with us. For me, Command & Conquer is a big influence. Nod and Kane and GDI and everything that goes into that side of things. 40K and Warhammer's universe is great. There's been so many things. The Age of Empires series. And for me, as this is off the beaten path for RTS gaming, but for me as a game designer, one of the franchises that has influenced me a lot is Civilization. There are very few games that are as raw game design as Civilization, with their interlocking systems and complex numbers that they have to somehow surface in the UI to make it playable. There's a lot there that has shaped me as a designer that I'm sure I carry in subconsciously to the things I worked on. But yeah, there's so many good things I could point to. I'm sorry. I could go on for hours like this.
That's fine. I mean, that's a good shout. I can't think of many games that successfully forced Gandhi to go to war, so that's always a big one from Civilization. But
I don't think they forced Gandhi to go to war. Gandhi wants to
go
to
war. He chose.
He chose violence. Tim, I'd love to be able to talk to you for forever, but we do have Monk coming after this. So I have one final question from chat. Coming in from Attico, who you may recognize the name. He's been doing a lot of grassroots esports stuff. And he wants to know whether there has been thought about bringing the esports side of storytelling into kind of campaign and co-op stuff. So, for example, a random Sentinel post would be named a Fear Dragon. Would be the Fear Dragon class Sentinel post. Or, you know, the World Championships won by Infernals and or won by an Infernal player. I'm not biased here. It's fine. And therefore, you know, you're seeing that in some way impact how the story is going. Or there's a one of the campaign characters is, you know, there's a new guy that shows in whose name is Yuna, and he's a prodigy commander or something, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and something that we have discussed. We like both the idea of campaign progress, or perhaps as people are playing matches in the other modes as well, being able to surface kind of trickle upwards and inform some sort of like over map of the conflict as well too. And the idea of having certain things that take place, whether it's in competitive, like you were using as an example, or even in other modes as well too, being able to have that come full circle back and be able to actually be sprinkled into the campaigns is exciting to us. We are not doing anything specific on that front right now, but we love the idea of interconnecting and interweaving the community that plays all these different modes, so that they don't feel siloed in and of themselves, but they feel like their experiences with how they play the game can actually impact the experience of others playing the game in other ways. And so that is part of making a social game, and it's something that I would love to be able to explore more in the future.
Yeah, man, the concept of an overworld that like ladder results dynamically impact is actually,
oh dude,
that's actually so cool, right? That gives me a reason to ladder, not just getting better in points, but suddenly I want to go and I want Infernals to win, so I can I mean, this is probably too far, but I can unlock some sort of campaign mission next because the Infernals are pulling ahead and a global mission gets unlocked.
It gets exciting the more you think about it. But the thing to just keep in mind is we are still very, very early. We're 3.5 years into building the company, assembling a team, building technology, building a game, and we already have the game out on NextFest. We have the service up and just thousands and thousands of players being able to play the game. We wouldn't have been even announced if we were within a large publisher right now. And we're doing this without the support services that big publishers have. We're doing it with our own QA, our own localization, our own support, our own everything. And this is a big challenge. So it's important to keep in mind that as we start talking about early access coming up, that this is a starting point for us. This is not a finish line. We're not, tossing the game out in early access and like, all right, let's work on game 2 now, guys. Our entire studio is focused to a person on Stormgate. And this is, we're all in on this. We're going to be developing for years to come on it. And as we get into it further, we're still building the core factions and the core gameplay of this, and we have a lot ahead on that front that I wish I could have gotten into, but we're going to be expanding and growing and iterating on all of these things going forward. So what you see now is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's just the first taste. And so I'm thankful that we're able to develop this way transparently with the community and get players' feedback and hear what the community is valuing and not valuing, because it absolutely helps us. It shapes this game alongside what we're wanting to do. It really tempers what we're making to have all of that input. So I'm very grateful for everyone who's checking out the game and providing feedback and who backed us in the Kickstarter too. There's a lot of exciting things ahead.
It's awesome. And by the way, shout out to you all. When Grubby tried it in the last test, there were some issues when everyone came in at once. And we had some issues like it seems like that's mostly been solved. I heard a couple complaints at the very start of Next Fest about some minor server issues, but the fact that it has been this stable is well done. So I know that's not just you, Tim. I know that's a ton of people behind the scenes making everything happen. But
absolutely, I actually have very, very little, if nothing, to do with that. The team that has been working really hard leading up to this, and just doing a fantastic job to make sure that as many bugs as possible were squished, the service is as stable as possible. And there's gonna be issues. There always will be, especially for a game as early as ours. So I just want to say to everyone who's playing the game now, thank you for doing that. And for anybody who is experiencing an issue, I'm sorry that you're having any sort of trouble with the game, but everybody's experiences and participation is helping to make Stormgate better, because we're collecting a lot of information, a lot of feedback, a lot of data that is going to go towards helping our game be as stable as possible when we do launch. It's going to help us inform our MMR and our leagues and our rankings for players, and just make the whole experience better for everyone. So this is a big part of it, and I'm really happy and proud of the team for how solid the game has been doing and how well it's been holding up. And I am super grateful for the response from the community that we've gotten.
Can I just say, sorry, I just want to say like a big thank you as well, like on behalf of the community, because what you highlight there, right, with this type of game at this stage in development, not being even remotely shown off for probably another 2+ years, I know from like a common creative standpoint, right? Obviously, like, I used to be a bit development, but even as a content creator, one thing I relate with is you have an idea, you hold on to it, it's your baby, right? It's not easy to expose it when it's so early on, but honestly, you guys, from what I've seen so far, should be absolutely proud of what you're doing here. And I love that you're allowing people to get access, because I think overall, obviously there'll be some bugs along the way, but the overall picture, for me at least, has been quite a positive one from the community.
Thank you very much. Yeah, developing a game transparently like this is amazing, and it absolutely helps us in a lot of ways, but it's also terrifying as a developer, because literally as we're making things, we're sharing them publicly. We're putting them in the alpha testers and the beta testers' hands before even we've had a chance to really iterate on it. And so that is, from a creative standpoint, something that has been a challenge for myself. It's a challenge for a lot of our dev team members to get comfortable with, but it's come with a lot of upside too, and a lot of great valuable feedback from it. So I want to say again, end on a note. I know you got to switch to Monk. Thank you for holding all the hard questions for him, by the way. But I want to end it on a note thanking the community for the fantastic support, because we would not have raised the funding to start the company in the first place. We would not be here with a game as good as we've got without the support of the community every step of the way. So thank you guys very much.